Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to have a look at a UK media personality. See if you can guess who she is. Throughout her career, she's attracted controversy, criticism, media scrutiny, legal issues, protests and petitions. She's been accused of racism by journalists, by advocacy groups and by politicians for her comments about migrants. In 2016, the Mail Online was forced to pay £150,000 to a Muslim family whom she falsely accused of extremist links. In the 2017 libel case, she was required to pay £24,000 in damages and £107,000 in legal costs to Jack Monroe after making defamatory remarks on Twitter. Her role at a radio station was terminated in May 2017 following comments on Twitter about the Manchester Arena bombing. She's been described as a far-right political commentator. She was permanently suspended from Twitter in June 2020 for what Twitter described as violations of our hateful conduct policy. Yes, tonight we're going to have a look at Miss Katie Hopkins. She's got a couple of messages and I thought, should I respond? Well, it would be rude not to, wouldn't it? Okay then, Katie, you've got a message for us. Go ahead.
Now that Corona seems to be going the wrong way again and the fear is building, I thought it might be helpful to share some simple facts for us all to think about.
Well, facts are always good. I hope you've got some.
Number one, let's remember, there are more cases because more people are being tested.
Well, technically no. We're aware of more cases because more people are being tested, but the number of tests doesn't affect the number of cases.
If you do more tests, then you will find out there are more people who have had corona.
Bingo!
Number of tests don't matter, number of cases don't matter.
Actually, the number of cases does matter.
Only hospital admissions matter if there's a problem in terms of a backlog, and only deaths, excess deaths, matter.
Well, certainly the number of people in or trying to get into hospital matter, and of course the number of deaths matter. But the number of cases matter as well. If that's climbing, then your R0 is going the wrong way. It goes too far and it spreads like wildfire.
So disregard all lots of new cases just because more people are being tested.
No. If you test 100 people and 5 come up positive, then you've got 5%. If you test 10,000 and you get 5%, that's great. But if you test 10,000 and actually find it's 8%, you've got a bigger problem than you thought.
Second up, there's some very dodgy maths being used.
Isn't there just?
In the UK, we're told England had the highest number of excess deaths. Well, no,
Well, yes, excess deaths are deaths over and above that predicted based on previous years.
We had the worst way of doing maths. We had everybody who died, whether it was with corona or from corona, we threw them all in the same pot.
Now that would be a pot that's labelled as the number of people who have died of corona. In fact, you could forget that. Excess deaths just means the number of extra deaths this year over and above previous years, which we're putting down to corona. Now it might be that we identify 80% of those excess deaths as corona. Maybe we actually identify 120%. But either way, it's the excess that counts.
They all died from corona. Even if you had a leukemia, pre-existing conditions, were very elderly, if corona was in your system, we called that a corona death.
Well, if you've got an underlying health condition, but you're living, you suddenly get corona and then you suddenly die, then it's quite a reasonable assumption to say that corona had an effect that caused you to die. It may not have been the only cause, but it was a contributory factor.
That's why our numbers were so high. And Spain too is doing crazy things with maths. There's
Crazy? Yeah, You say corona, I go crazy.
Saying they've got loads of new cases. You'll have seen the graph with that fearsome looking trajectory. Actually, they're also putting in there people who've had the antibody test, who are showing they have the antibody in their system. They're calling those new cases as well.
Well, those are people that have had corona. You want to identify how many people in your population either have or have had corona, so you can identify how fast it's spreading. That seems quite sensible to me. Now, if your excess deaths are zero, then although some deaths might have been due to corona, you've had less deaths from other things. So overall, there's no difference. The problem is we have excess deaths over and above the norm.
Whereas, of course, those people had corona at some time in the past, have developed the antibody to it. They're not new cases, they're old cases, but they're being thrown into the mix at the same time.
For statistical purposes, yes.
And finally, of course, there's this idea of face masks being very important because it's very serious, and the second wave and what's going to happen, and look at all these new cases and oh my goodness.
Yes, face masks are very important. Tell us about them.
In fact, masks are just a training device.
Pardon? Masks are a training device like what?
You might use nappies on your
And for our American friends, that's diapers.
children, or pull-up pants. They're to train you to accept a vaccine when it comes.
No, they're to prevent you from passing on coronavirus, or at least to reduce massively the risk of you passing on coronavirus to other people.
They're to make you think that you can't go outside without needing something.
No, you can go outside. What you can't do is mix with other people. What you can't do, in most places now, is go into shops. Because if you have corona, which you may not know, possibly because you haven't been tested, and possibly just because you're asymptomatic, you could easily pass it on to other people.
They're to make you feel like you need something to be safe.
No, it's nothing to do with your safety. You wearing one gives me safety. Me wearing one gives you safety.
Therefore, you will exchange your face mask very readily for a vaccine when the government suggests that you should have it.
I would get the vaccine like a shot, because that means I could no longer catch the coronavirus. The risks to my health have gone down massively. Why wouldn't I have the vaccine?
If masks were so important, please ask yourself, why did nobody make them mandatory when we were at the peak of the virus?
Well, a couple of reasons. Firstly, the science with regard to masks and corona was not very good. They weren't sure about how it spreads. We now know that it can spread in droplets. The second reason is that there was only limited PPE. We wanted to make sure that doctors and nurses, those in the front line, those being in the vicinity of people with corona, were as protected as they possibly could be. Now we have more masks, and now the science has more data which shows that masks massively cut down the risk of you passing on corona to somebody else.
Why were they never brought in before? Why now, when there are hardly any issues, real issues with corona?
Hardly any issues. Well, in many places, the rate of corona is going up. Look at Spain, Germany, other countries around the world. Look at America. It's skyrocketing there. And you say there's no issues. What a maroon.
And finally, we're not going to get this time back. If you're living half a life right now, your life is very small. Maybe you're not going out with friends. Maybe you're not travelling, going on transport. Maybe you're restricting the amount of fun you could have. The government, who's providing everything for you, they're not going to provide you with this time back.
Well, actually, the government's provided me with nothing. I'm working, and I've worked all the way through. I'm continuing to support my family. Other people have not been in that position, and so they have required and deserved the support of the government. And I mean, you're saying you're not having fun. Well, by that logic, what you should do is go out and get smashed on whiskey every night, take all the hard drugs you can, make sure you have real good fun. Of course, your life might end up being quite short.
You're not going to get an extra 2 years of life free because you gave up half of this one. This is it. You get one life, and death has always been part of it. But somehow the media have managed to manipulate death to be utterly terrifying so that people now live in fear.
Now, I'm not scared of death. Death will come. I don't want it. I'm not rushing towards it. If wearing a mask and socially distancing for a number of months means that I and other people and my friends and my family end up protected from corona, that is a price I'm willing to pay. That will mean that I, my family and my friends could get years and years more life. We could all ignore the masks, we could all party, ignore social distancing. Coronavirus will spread like wildfire and an awful lot of people will die just in weeks and a few months.
What's the point of living life if you're not going to live it to the full? The mainstream media have a lot of things to answer for. They are the ones manipulating these truths, but they know and they rely on the fact that fear sells. Don't be so cheap to be bought.
Well, thanks for that, Katie. Oh, you've got more to say. So, Miss Harpy Catkins, tell us your second message.
Lots of people asking me about vaccines. My personal opinion is that I will not be having any vaccine for corona, and nor will any of my family members if I have anything to do with it.
And do you have any form of medical qualification or expertise or experience over and above perhaps being a first aider? No? And if you want to not have a vaccine, I guess that's your decision. I hope if you stop your children from having it, I really, really hope that they don't get it. And that if they do get it, it's mild. Children have died of this. Why on earth wouldn't you want your children to be protected? And even if they don't suffer, if they get it, they could pass it on to others, including vulnerable family members, perhaps your grandmother. Will you still be okay if she catches it from your child and then drops dead?
I reject the flu vaccine for my children, and particularly for my youngest son at the age of 7. I was strong-armed by his school into having that flu jab. I rejected it. I was contacted.
So basically the school said, has your child had the flu jab? That's strong-arming. Or did they literally grab your arm, pull you into the office and say, "Oi, Harpy, get your kid vaccinated"? I somewhat doubt it.
It again because I must surely have made a mistake, and I rejected it again. Flu vaccines are known to be pretty much useless in 2018.
No, they're not useless. The flu is a disease that mutates prolifically, making it very hard to get the correct vaccine to target it. They use an awful lot of study to design the vaccine on a year-by-year basis to target the expected flu. But sometimes it's not quite on target.
There were 50,000 extra deaths due to flu because the vaccine had been so ineffective. People took it but didn't really know what they were taking, and it's at best kind of guesswork.
So the flu in 2018 didn't particularly work very well and 50,000 died. Well, you just debunked yourself, you idiot. That means perhaps every other year where it has worked, it's saved 50,000 lives. You can stand there with your mouth open and in shock, but you have just debunked yourself.
So vaccines aren't always effective. Second up, when you're trying to shove a vaccine into a small child, like a 7-year-old.
Shove. Yeah, let's use a word to make it sound worse than it is. When you're vaccinating a child, carry on.
It's not for his health. My son's perfectly healthy. He's probably the healthiest of the lot of us. They're doing it because they want him to be part of the herd. They want it so that he won't get it and pass it to someone else who may be affected more seriously by it. But frankly,
my dear, I don't give a damn what you say. Yes, they want your son to be part of the herd. Do you not consider him part of the herd, part of the population of the UK, a human being? We should be working together. Now, not everybody can have vaccines. Mrs. Sensible, for instance, cannot due to some of the ingredients, and she has some severe allergies, so she can't have it. So as much as she would like to protect herself, she can't. She is relying on me, our other family members, and the general public, including you, to get vaccinated, because that protects her. You selfish woman.
I really care about my son's health. I care about him first and foremost. I don't really mind about the rest of the herd. They can do whatever they need to do. I'm not a sheep, my son isn't.
Yeah, of course you care about your son. So what harm do you think is going to come by getting vaccinated? And that's very nice, isn't it? You don't care about anyone else. You really are a selfish bint, aren't you?
The rest of the flock, if they're afraid, stay out of the way, get out of my way.
Oh, get out of my way. You're a Karen, aren't you? All you can think about is yourself. As I said, there are many people who can't be vaccinated. You're quite happy for them to suffer or get out of your way, when in fact all you need to do is just have a vaccine. Then you can't contract the disease, which means you can't spread it onto others. And of course, leaving that aside, if you haven't got a vaccine, you may actually catch it and suffer. And with coronavirus, you could suffer very badly and even die.
And of course, what concerns me as well is the media. I'm watching them at work. All of this messaging around the vaccine, so positive, so chirpy, so upbeat. A new vaccine, we might have it by Christmas. What an excitement. Who's going to be first to unwrap their vaccine prize?
You sarky mare. I would be first. I would happily have the vaccine. If they said, yep, we've got it now, because they're still testing. If they say, yep, we've got it now and it's safe, stick it in my arm. That protects me. It protects my family. Hey, I'd be protecting you. Producing a vaccine is very expensive, very time consuming. Of course they're excited that they're making good progress. Who wouldn't be? Apart from ignorant mares like yourself, apparently.
I know this media. I know this messaging. It's contrived. It's controlled by the state. It's to make you believe that the vaccine is only a good thing. And what do you think these things are? These masks.
What it does, Karen Hopkins, is when you're flapping your outspoken mouth, the droplets that are expelled will be caught in the mask. Those droplets can carry COVID. If they're caught, nobody else is going to breathe them in.
That you need something else is training you to accept a state vaccine. Because the simple truth is, if you do...
You wouldn't know the simple truth if it came up to you, said, I'm the simple truth, and smacked you in that face.
Not have any underlying health conditions, if you are not morbidly obese, and if you are under the age of 80, statistically, you can get corona and be just fine.
Well, what if you do have an underlying health condition? What if you are morbidly obese? What if you are over 80? That's all right then. Good to die.
I don't believe you need one of these, and I believe this is a training device to foist a vaccine upon you. These are just my views.
Yes, if only you'd kept them to yourself.
Clearly, you need to question everything. You will make your own splendid choices. But
I think we will.
Remember, if you reject a vaccine, you're not an anti-vaxxer. It just means you rejected a vaccine that you believed you had no need for.
No, you're an anti-vaxxer. Simple as. You're anti-vaccine. If you were not anti-vaccine, you would be happy to take the vaccine. You, madam, are an idiot.
Be careful about language. It's one of the most powerful weapons used by the left.
You're quite right. You complete and utter Katie Olivia Hopkins. You really are a totally despicable woman. Until next time, stay sensible.
Shut up and sit down.